Good morning, Irresistible. Good morning to everybody watching online. I am Les Farley. My wife Grace and I are the founding and senior pastors of Irresistible Church. And for the convenience of everybody here, we put all the scripture references on the screen behind me. I also have quotes and notes and things that can help you study through this message all on your own, because all I'm going to do really is hit the highlights. There's a lot more that we need to get into with this. Those of you online aren't going to be able to see the screen, but you can find the same information on the Bible app in the Events tab. And the quickest way to get to those and download them and use them for your study is to click the link that went on this morning on Irresistible's Facebook page, and all of that stuff went live on the Bible app at 9 o'clock. So it is there for your convenience. It is there so that you can continue your study. And today we're just going to get right into it. This is kind of long by my standards, but it's something that I feel like it's very, very, very important. So you remember when Moses died, and I don't mean are you old enough to remember when Moses died, but you've read the story about Moses dying, and then they put another dude in charge. Well, the guy that got put in charge, the new sheriff in town, is Joshua. And Joshua has the unenviable task of trying to follow Moses, follow the leadership examples and the things that Moses did. And the very first thing that God tells him to do is to take, now some scholars really differ in how much that it was going on, but some scholars say there was as many as 1.5 million Hebrews, up to 5 million with wives and children and things that way, plus all of their livestock, plus all of their property, and all of everything else that they'd been wandering around with. But Joshua has to take them across the Jordan River at spring flood stage and settle the land. Actually, there's a lot more to that, but we'll save that for another one. So today I'm going to work our way through leading through uncertainty. Heavenly Father, thank you. Uncertainty is something that we live with every day in this country and this world. But I thank you, Father, that you have shown by example, and you have shown by stories, and you've shown by many, many other methods, that there is a way to lead, even if we are uncertain where we're going to be or where we're going to go. Lord, I praise you and I thank you for it in Jesus' name. So let me set the stage for you. Joshua is a 40-year-old slave in Egypt. This is back before they left. He's 40 years old, and he's been a slave his whole life. Slavery is all that he and his family have ever known. He and his people have ever known for 400 years. 400 years they've been slaves in Egypt. He was born into it. There was no escape from it. You got out of it when you died. His people knew nothing at this point. They had no real social consciousness that didn't include slavery. One night at the Hebrew City Council meeting, this 80-year-old guy who smelled like sheep and goats and burning shrubbery gets up to talk. And he talks about a God that Joshua has barely heard of. I mean, they're slaves. They don't have churches. They don't have synagogues. He talks about freedom in a home that he and his people have never been to. It's kind of like Sarah came home from the military from overseas. She came home to a place she'd never been. Because we moved while she left. We didn't think she would find us, but she did. That's not exactly true. And he talks about this place far, far away called the Promised Land. And somewhere in the middle of that meeting, Joshua gets excited. And Joshua says, maybe this is for us. Maybe this is for me. So Joshua gets excited. He goes home and he tells his wife. And Mrs. Joshua says, so what's this old guy's name? And Joshua says, I don't know. He didn't say, but he smelled like sheep and goats and burning shrubbery. And he talked about a home in a place called the Promised Land. Mrs. Joshua asked again, where is this Promised Land? Guys, you know what I'm talking about, right? And Joshua says, I don't know, but he said God would lead us to it. And Mr. Joshua asked another question. Is that where he came from? Is that how he knows he can lead us to it? And Joshua says, I don't know. He smelled like sheep and goats and burning shrubbery, but he said we could go with him. She says, and how can you trust someone that smells like sheep and goats and burning shrubbery and not know any of this stuff? And he says, the one true God told him. And Mrs. Joshua rolled her eyes. And she said, wonderful. Just what we need, another God in Egypt. You march right back down there and you tell that smelly old guy that I have questions. So long story short, I don't know if it really happened like that. In my head, it happens that way every day. I mean, so that's just it. Long story short, Moses does what God tells him to do. Signs and wonders and flies and frogs and locusts and death. And leads the Hebrew people out of Egypt, through the Red Sea, over the river, through the woods, right to the edge of the promised land, just like he promised. But Israel didn't go. This is where I wish I could sound like Morgan Freeman, but Israel didn't go into the promised land. They let fear stop them. Let's fast forward 40 more years. By now, Joshua is 80 years old. 40 years of walking around the same desert, around the same mountain. 40 years. And all that Joshua learned about leadership and all that time from Moses was this. No matter how called you are, no matter how anointed you are, and no matter how closely you walk and talk with God, there are plenty of people who just know that they can do it better than you. Anyway, in spite of all of that, God anoints Joshua to be the president of Israel, and after mourning Moses' death for the appropriate time, he tells Joshua one morning, gather the tribes. It's time to go. Let's skip to Joshua chapter 4, verse 4. Joshua called together the 12 men that he had chosen, one from each of the tribes of Israel. Notice again, we see this a lot in the Bible. No voting, no popularity contest. He chose the people who were going to lead the tribes. In verse 5, he told them, go to the middle of the Jordan, in front of the ark of the Lord your God. Each of you must pick up one stone and carry it out to on your shoulder. 12 stones in all, one for each of the 12 tribes of Israel. Now let me give you a little bit of background on that verse. The Jordan River at flood stage, most places, most archaeologists have said that at that time of the year, at flood stage, it was anywhere from 1.5 to 2 miles wide. Wasn't deep, but it was wide. And just in case, look at that right in the middle of that, the ark of the Lord your God. You're going to go to the middle of the Jordan in front of the ark of the Lord your God. So what does that mean to you? That means that the ark of the Lord your God is in the middle of the Jordan River. Now, it's not floating. It's not a boat. It's not an ark. It's being carried by the priests. So just in case you think you might want to get into ministry, remember you could be wading out into a river and waiting for 1.5 to 5 million people and their livestock and their property to pass you by. Verse 6, Joshua continued, he said, we'll use these stones to build a memorial. In the future, your children will ask you, what do these stones mean? And verse 7, he said, then you can tell them, they remind us that the Jordan River stopped flowing when the Ark of the Lord's Covenant went across. It says in several different translations that the Jordan River piled up upstream. So it didn't just dry up and go away. When that ark got into that river, it stopped flowing and the water piled up until they all passed through, just like the Red Sea. For the children of Israel, seeing that pile of stones. Now today, we could go places and we could see a pile of stones and we think, pile of stones, cool. But if you go to a lot of parks and you go to a lot of national preserves and things that way, you're going to see usually a big pillar that's set up at the gate at the beginning, and it has a plaque on it, and it tells you why this property was dedicated as a park or as a memorial or as a national forest. So that when you see it, you don't have to remember the stories that the children of Israel did. You just have to know how to read. And you can tell what's going on, but they didn't have that back then. So that pillar told everybody as they were milling around the promised land, this is where the Jordan River miraculously stopped flowing and we could cross into the promised land. It became part of their national heritage. As leaders, people in our organization want that kind of a vision from us. They want us to have a certain set. It's just like last week. Your integrity must be so absolute that they know when you want to do something, it's going to be done, and it's going to be done the right way. Henry Kissinger once said, every success is usually an admission ticket to a new set of decisions. In the old Pentecostal church and charismatic church, they used to say, new levels, new devils. You can get by with some, and you can overcome some, but if you're going to move on to where God wants you to be, there's a whole new set of them waiting for you. There's a whole new set of problems. Every time we go somewhere, every time we grow anything, every time we do anything, there's a whole new set of problems. And it's overcoming them that causes us to be leaders. Right. Uncertainty as a leader, uncertainty is your constant companion. Because I don't know if you know this or not, but you don't know everything you think you know. I don't know everything I thought I knew. You have to get used to leading through uncertainty. Where are we going to go, Joshua? I don't know, but the old smelly guy said we're going here. God says do this. God says buy this property. Why do we need this property, God? God says just buy it. Okay. God, did you know the roof needed sealant put on it? Yeah. Go ahead and do it. You're not going to help? There's an author named Jim Kouzes that said this, uncertainty creates a necessary condition for leadership. I've told people for a lot of years, when I was in sales, I learned a lot of bad things, and I refused to use them. But I did learn one thing. If there's not anybody leading, I'll take it. I'll do it. I'll take your presentation away from you. And I didn't do it to be mean. I just did it because somebody's got to lead. It might as well be me. I can get home on time that way. One of the best ways to decrease uncertainty in your life is clarity. To be clear about what you want, where you want to go, what you want to do. I read a thing in, I can't remember what magazine it was in I was reading, but the guy was talking about making the vision clear. And he said, just tell your congregation that you want to get a car. And then ask each of them what car they envision. Because when I say car, you think of something because you have one of those typically. But is the car you envision the one I envision? Could be, but maybe not. You have to be a lot more clear than just some general thing like car or truck. Any of you follow football? Football. Now, I know Ohio State's coming up here pretty soon, but football. Can you imagine a football game? In a football game, the quarterback calls the plays. In today's world, it's the coaches through a radio anymore, but it used to be that the quarterback used to be the one that knew all the plays, knew all the stuff, had to be a human computer almost to figure out what all needed to be done, and he would call the plays. Can you ever envision a play that they didn't outline on the board? You remember all the X's and O's and all the stuff? I mean, we saw that all the time, even in high school. This guy does this one does that. Everybody has an assignment. And if you do your assignment, if you're on the offense, if you do your assignment correctly, it usually ends up in a touchdown. But then there's their X's on the other side that have their own play that's called. And if you do everything correctly as a defensive player, you stop a touchdown and maybe even score one of your own. But can you imagine a game where all 22 people just get out there and the guy says hike and they all just run and do whatever they want to? I've seen games like that. They're called Pee-wee. The quarterback says we're going to score a touchdown, but he doesn't tell them what play it is. In his mind, he knows what he's going to do, but he throws the ball and there's nobody there. Or worse, there's a defensive player there waiting for it. And everybody stands around and do we tackle him or do we let him run? Is he bigger than you? I'd let him run. If all he does is imagine it in his mind and doesn't communicate it, if all those players did, as players in each of those positions, is just go out and do anything they want to, they won't play long. Because every one of you has something, every player has something that they're supposed to do. There's an inconvenient truth that most leaders don't share with young proteges coming up. I'm going to share it with you. Something we've learned. Something we learned a long time ago as children's pastors. When you're the head of something, you deal with more uncertainty than anybody else in your organization. We're responsible for a lot of things. Some of it may seem easy to you. And one of the things that my coach told me was that there's somebody out there that likes to do the things you hate. And I'm still looking for some of you. There's a few of you I got to talk to. We not only have our own uncertainties, and if anything the last 2 years have taught us is that even your health is an uncertainty in today's world. I mean, we've confessed and we've prayed and we've done everything we can do, and yet Satan still attacked. And there was a time, and I've told her this several times, there was a time I didn't know if I was bringing her home. The goal of leadership isn't to eliminate uncertainty. The goal is to navigate it successfully. There's a book I'm going to recommend to you, and I don't have it in my notes. I don't have a picture for the screen or anything, but it's called Canoeing the Mountains. It's about Lewis and Clark. They were sent out, you remember, to survey this Louisiana Purchase that we had just bought. You know, everything on this continent from what we know of by the Mississippi River all the way out to the great ocean. And they outfitted them with canoes because in the eastern part of the U.S., there are rivers everywhere, and you can just canoe your way to go see everything you want. And a few months into it, they started seeing something on the horizon. Another month goes by, and they still see them things, and they're getting bigger. And then the river ran out. Because if you know anything about rivers, they start in mountains and come out into the plains. Well, if you're going that way, they start getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and they finally came up onto these mountains that are 10,000, 12,000 feet high. And I forget what it was, but it was over a month that they carried the canoes with them, thinking that these can't last that long. They were on the foothills of the Rockies, and they were trying to carry their canoes across. And after a while, their Indian guides finally said, you know what, those are worthless. We can build more. Can you imagine if they hadn't have changed their mind? They'd still be out there wandering around the mountains somewhere with a canoe on their shoulder, trying to figure out how to get to the Pacific Ocean. When you rise up through the ranks of leadership, you're going to be called on to make decisions regarding values and ideas and purposes and positionings and branding and strategy and mission. And all of it has to do with your area of responsibility. But then you also have to impart that vision and those things to the people who are with you in your ministry. And if you give enough time, your decisions are going to show up on the bottom line. How many more people are in this ministry? How many more people are involved in that? How many people are here? What's happened here? You know, the ultimate bottom line, and I get pastors get mad at me for saying this a lot, but the ultimate bottom line is what's in the bank? Are we doing what we're supposed to be doing? Because even though we're nonprofit, we do have to make a profit or the IRS will shut us down. Moses and Joshua knew that to them, leadership was a journey. And it is to us. Anything you do in leadership creates the necessity of a journey. The challenge is that when you have someone in your ministry or in your business, unless you are very clear about what you want and what you need and where you're going, you're just expecting them to understand and believe in you. You're like the smelly old guy going into the meeting and saying, trust me, I know where this is. That's the tension that every leader lives with. That's the uncertainty side of it is something that you'll never get past because it's part of leadership. When you're negotiating uncertain terrain, you have to still communicate a clear and compelling vision for people. And it's just, that's just the way it is. I won't lie to you and tell you that it ever gets easier, because every level of leadership will require more uncertainty to be overcome. Every great military leader, we watched that movie last night, Pressure, about the D-Day invasion, and it was the meteorologists that basically controlled D-Day. It was really kind of cool. But the thing was, we started looking at each other, and Grace finally said, "What's D-Day mean?" So I looked it up, and it's a military acronym, and D just means day. So it's the Day invasion. Yeah. And then they had, what was the one? H hour. H hour, just H is hour. So it's hour. When are we going to go? On the hour. On the right day. Every great military leader, every business leader, every coach has made some bad calls. And guess what? They survived. Here's a nugget of truth. Even bad calls were unmistakably clear. Did you know that before the Day invasion, they had a rehearsal to see if it could be done? And the communications broke down, and friendly fire killed hundreds of Allied soldiers on the beach where they were practicing. Got killed by their own people because they used the wrong frequency on their radio. I never knew anything about that stuff. Well, they're not going to tell you they made a mistake, right? The toughest nugget of truth to realize is every call, good or bad, has to be clear. It may be a big mistake to do some of the things we do, but if we do it unmistakably clear, then we at least get that done, and then we can look back on it and say, well, that didn't work. That's not it. Soldiers, sales forces, teams, all of them with bad coaches, bad generals, bad whoever's, they knew without a doubt that this is what they were expected to do. And some of them knew that it was a wrong call. And as a leader, you have to be open to listening to somebody saying, there might be a different way to do this. There might be a better way to do this. If you execute a bad play perfectly, it's still a bad play, right? It may work, but it's still a bad play. And that brings us back to my good old buddy Joshua. Joshua. I want to do a quick review of everything Joshua learned under Moses' tutorship. Wandering 101, how to deal with murmurers. Wandering 202, proper manner etiquette. And Wandering 103, snake bite remedies. Not one of those helped him get in the promised land. For what God was calling Joshua to do, none of this stuff in that 40 years meant a thing. Can you hear, if Mrs. Joshua asked a bunch of questions, can you hear the questions that Joshua got the day that he told everybody we're moving out? Joshua 1, verse 10, Joshua commanded the officers of Israel, verse 11, go through the camp. Now this is a camp, again, 1.5 million to 5 million people, camels spitting, yak yelling, cows mooing, goats screaming. Go through the camp and tell the people to get their provisions ready. In 3 days you will cross the Jordan River and take possession of the land the Lord your God is giving you. Mr. Joshua, sir, how are we going to cross the river? Have you seen how big it is? You seen how wide it is? I'm not sure. God said, just get ready. We're going to cross. Joshua, what do we do when we get to the other side? I don't know. God hadn't told me that yet. God said, just get ready. We're going to cross the river. Joshua, when will we get to the other side? I'll tell you when we get there. Should be pretty obvious. Dry land. Joshua, just be ready in 3 days. We used to get those conversations. Are we there yet? Are we there yet? How much longer before we're there yet? My standard answer was 5 minutes. It didn't matter if we had 20 years to go. I had 5 minutes. Clear direction in the face of uncertainty positions your team for an overwhelming victory. You have to have a clear set of directions so that you know when you get to where you're going. Uncertainty is not your enemy. Uncertainty provides you with job security, and it gives you some amazing opportunities if you'll just embrace it. Every decision has an amount of uncertainty associated with it. And as leaders, I will caution you that you're not supposed to act like you're not uncertain about things. You're supposed to tell people, I don't know. I don't know. This is what God said. I don't know how we're going to do it. I was always taught to say, I don't know, but I'll find out. And that was sales 101 for me. I don't know, but I'll find out. I rode that horse for 6 years. I don't know, but I'll find out. I don't know is a sign of good leadership. I don't know. I don't know everything, but I'll find out. There are people that can tell me. Omniscience is not a prerequisite to be a leader. There's only one omniscient being in the universe, and that is God himself. And if you'll ask him, sometimes he'll tell you, and other times he'll say, find out. Go find out. Go read. Go study. And here's the interesting thing. When you read through a lot of these books on leadership, and I've got a bunch of them, when you read through these things, you find out that when you express your uncertainty about something with confidence, people still follow you. I don't know, but we're going to go. Your ability to lead doesn't require you to know everything. Success is measured by the scoreboard, not by the playbook. Any given day, any football team can win. And the old sales adage of even a blind squirrel finds a nut every once in a while. You know, if you ask enough people to buy, somebody will. I tested that theory one time. Everybody I talked to, I said, you don't want to buy this, do you? And after about 100 and some people, they did. I went back and told my sales manager, and he just slapped his head, and he said, you weren't supposed to go do that. That's just a story. I said, but if it's a story, I need to see if it's true. And then I had to go back and talk to all the people that I said, you don't want to buy this, and ask them if they did. Uncertainty is going to change your route, but it never changes destinations. And if you think that doesn't work, just talk to my family about vacation time with Pastor Les. Always pencil your plans, chisel your vision in stone. Plans can change, visions don't. There are a lot of godly authors with books about leadership. I recommend that you find some. Get some that resonate with you. You may have to go through a pile of stinkers before you find a good one, but find some and do some of the exercises, some of the things that it tells you to do. I will guarantee you that if you'll do it and be diligent about it, you'll be very glad that you spent the time to do it. Because leadership is not something you're necessarily born with. Leadership is something that we're taught, we're mentored, or we learn. And you could have been raised in the worst family in the entire world and still be a good leader because you spent time working on yourself. If nobody else is going to work on you, work on yourself. That's the simplest way to become a leader. All right, next week, we'll pay another visit to uncertainty's next door neighbor. Second cousin twice removed, worry. It's called what? Me worry? This is my favorite friend, Alfred E. Newman, from the Mad magazine back in the 70s. I've covered worry many times, but I'm going to cover it again, and I'm going to give you some new information about what to do about not worrying. There's a legitimate reason to be concerned about a lot of things, but there's never a good reason to worry. And if I've learned one thing over the past couple of years is that faith overcomes worry. And if you are speaking in faith, God's going to bring the right people around you, and they're going to have the solution to a lot of the things that you are uncertain about or that you're even worried about. And my only proof to that is sitting right over on the front row. So, YouTube, thank you. Mark your calendars. It's just next week, but mark your calendar anyway. It might be fun. You'll be glad you did. And welcome my good friend, Elder Tim Nash, to tell you guys goodbye. And that's probably exactly all he's going to say.
Probably shouldn't have said that. I'll just tell you this. If you feel like you're a leader, I hope this is encouraging you and lifting you up and giving you some direction. And if you're not a leader, I hope it's lifting you up and giving you some direction. Because if you're not a leader, you need to be praying for your leaders. Because if it's this much, they obviously need your prayers. So hopefully you'll come visit us sometime soon. We're always here every Sunday waiting for you. So come on. Bye.